When money is tight and mouths are many, the Amish turn to old recipes that have fed families for generations. These 25 cheap dinners aren't just meals, they're survival. Built from scratch, made with love, and strong enough to carry a family through the hardest days. Let's get started. Some dinners don't need meat to feel full, and Shoefly Noodles prove it. This meal comes straight from Amish kitchens where nothing is wasted and every bite counts. It starts simple, just egg noodles, butter, onions, and a spoonful of molasses. That might not sound like much, but once it's all fried up in a cast iron pan, the result is a sticky, sweet, and salty dinner that fills the belly fast. The noodles are boiled until soft, then tossed into a hot skillet with chopped onions and melted butter. Once the onions start to brown and the noodles get a little crispy on the edges, in goes the molasses. Just a bit changes everything. The molasses gives the dish a deep, warm flavor, something between brown sugar and maple syrup. It sticks to the noodles, coats the onions, and creates a shine that looks like caramel. The smell fills the kitchen and tells you dinner is almost done. This dish doesn't cost much, and that's the point. Egg noodles are cheap. Molasses lasts forever in the pantry. Onions and butter, always on hand. The Amish know how to stretch ingredients, and Shoefly Noodles are one of those dishes that turns a handful of simple items into something comforting and memorable. It's often served with a slice of fresh bread or pickled vegetables on the side, but it can stand on its own just fine. Families eat this when there's no meat left in the smokehouse and no fresh vegetables from the garden. Still, no one complains. It's warm, filling, and feels like something a grandmother would serve on a cold night. It's not fancy, but it gets the job done, and then some. This is survival food that doesn't feel like it. That's why it stayed around for so long. Shoefly Noodles may be simple, but in the Amish world, simple is often the smartest way to eat. On days when meat was too expensive or just not available, the Amish leaned on beans to carry the meal. Bean pie casserole is one of those humble, hidden treasures. It doesn't look fancy, but what's inside matters more. Creamy mashed beans, tender potatoes, cornmeal for texture, and just enough onion to bring it all to life. It starts with cooked kidney beans. These are mashed until they're smooth but still a little chunky. Then come the potatoes, usually left over from another meal, mashed and mixed in to add body and warmth. The onions are chopped small and fried until golden, giving off a smell that fills the whole house. Everything is stirred together with cornmeal, which helps bind the casserole and adds a soft crunch when baked. The mixture goes into a pan and is baked until the top is golden and crisp. It doesn't rise like a cake, but it gets firm and toasty around the edges, which is often the best part. Some Amish families will top it with a spoonful of homemade ketchup or drizzle of gravy, but most eat it plain. And why not? It's already packed with flavor, and every bite is soft, warm, and filling. Bean pie casserole is one of those meals that sneaks up on you. It seems simple, but then you go back for seconds. It's cheap to make, easy to stretch, and strong enough to be dinner for a whole family. And best of all, it uses ingredients almost every Amish family already has stored. Dried beans, cornmeal, onions, potatoes, no fancy spices, no store-bought sauces. This dish is built for survival, but it feels like comfort food. It's the kind of meal that shows how strong traditions can be. In Amish homes, it's not about showing off. It's about showing up to the table with something warm, hearty, and made with care. Bean pie casserole isn't just cheap, it's smart, and it's been feeding families for generations. It doesn't take much to make a meal feel like home. For the Amish, cornmeal mush with fried eggs is proof that even the simplest food can be powerful. Just a few ingredients, cornmeal, water, a little salt, and eggs can come together to make a dinner that's warm, heavy, and ready to keep a hardworking family full through the night. First, the cornmeal is boiled slowly in water with a bit of salt, stirred until thick like porridge. It takes time, and patience matters. Rush it, and it'll burn or clump. Once it thickens, it's poured into a loaf pan and left to cool and firm up. By the time it sets, it can be sliced like bread. That's when the real magic begins. The slices are laid into a hot skillet with butter or lard and fried until golden brown on the outside and soft in the middle. Some people say it looks like French toast without the sugar, but this version is all about crisp edges and a soft, corn-flavored center. Then come the eggs. Fried however the family likes them, sunny side up, scrambled, or flipped over easy. They're placed on top of the crispy cornmeal slices where the yolk can soak in or the scrambled bits can mix with the crust. On occasion, if there's leftover gravy from the night before, that gets poured over the whole thing. But even without gravy, the meal is plenty rich. There's nothing fancy about it. No seasoning blends, no special tools, just basics cooked well. That's the heart of Amish cooking. They know how to make meals stretch and how to get the most flavor out of what little they have. Cornmeal mush is one of those survival foods passed down through generations, and it still shows up on dinner tables because it works. This dish doesn't try to impress. It fills the belly, keeps the budget small, and uses what's already in the cupboard. For the Amish, that's not just smart. It's survival with a touch of comfort. Some meals don't need meat or bread. They just need balance, and that's exactly what this Amish dish delivers. Warm, buttery potatoes served next to cold, crunchy slaw, one side soft, the other sharp. Together, they create a dinner that surprises most people the first time they try it. It starts with the slaw. A fresh cabbage is chopped thin, tossed with shredded carrots or onions if available. Then comes the dressing, a quick mix of vinegar, a spoonful of sugar, and mustard seeds. The dressing is poured over the cabbage and everything is left to sit. In that time, the vinegar softens the cabbage just a little while the sugar and seeds soak in, giving every bite a bite of flavor. Meanwhile, the potatoes are peeled, boiled, and tossed with a big chunk of butter. Some Amish families like to add parsley or pepper, but most keep it plain. The potatoes are soft, warm, and full of that creamy, rich flavor butter always brings out. And then comes the best part, putting them together. Not mixed, not layered, just side by side. The heat from the potatoes and the chill from the slaw create a strange but satisfying contrast. One is creamy, the other crisp. One is smooth, the other has a snap. This might not sound like a full dinner to some people, but to Amish families, this is more than enough. It fills the plate, fills the stomach, and costs very little to make. Cabbage stores well, potatoes are dug up in bulk, and vinegar dressing lasts forever in the fridge or cellar. This dinner doesn't pretend to be anything it's not. It's honest, fast, and powerful. It comes from a time when people had to make every dollar stretch and every crop count. And it proves that good food isn't about how fancy it is. It's about how well it fits the life it's feeding. Not every dinner needs color or sweetness. Some just need strength. Sauerkraut and dumplings is one of those meals that might look plain but carries deep flavor and history. In many Amish homes, it's known as a cold weather classic, warm, sour, soft, and made in one pot from simple ingredients. It starts with sauerkraut, the fermented cabbage that's been stored in jars or crocks since the fall. Sauerkraut isn't just tasty, it's a survival food. It lasts all winter without a fridge, and just a scoop adds flavor to any meal. In this dish, the kraut is dumped into a big pot with water or broth, a spoonful of caraway seeds, and sometimes a pinch of black pepper. It's left to simmer gently, warming up and spreading its sharp, salty smell through the house. While the sauerkraut simmers, the dumpling dough is made from scratch. Just flour, water, salt, and a little baking powder to help them puff up. The dough is dropped in spoonfuls directly into the bubbling pot. No need for a separate pan. The steam and heat from the sauerkraut cook the dumplings until they're light and fluffy on the inside, but coated in the rich, sour flavor of the broth. It's the kind of meal that doesn't need sides. It's all there in the pot. Fiber from the cabbage, carbs from the dumplings, warmth from every bite. It fills the stomach, saves time, and uses ingredients that cost very little and store well. Some Amish families add a small bit of sausage or lard if they have it, but even without meat, this meal does the job. It sticks to your bones, gives you energy for the evening chores, and leaves you full without draining the pantry. This isn't fancy food. It's practical food. It comes from years of making do and turning basics into something bold. Sauerkraut and dumplings remind you that meals can be simple and still hit deep. And when the wind's cold and the pantry's low, that's exactly what you need. In Amish kitchens, nothing goes to waste, not even stale bread. That's why dishes like onion and egg gravy over bread exist. It's not about showing off. It's about using every last crumb and turning it into something filling, warm, and rich with flavor. This meal begins with onions, lots of them. They're chopped and fried slowly in butter or lard until golden brown, not rushed. The goal is to bring out their natural sweetness while still keeping a bit of bite. The smell alone is enough to get everyone's attention. Once the onions are soft and caramel-colored, eggs are cracked in and scrambled right into the pan. The heat mixes the eggs with the butter and onion juices, turning everything thick and golden. Then comes a spoonful or two of flour stirred in to make a roux. Water or milk is slowly added to turn it into a smooth, creamy gravy. It bubbles gently until it thickens, never too watery, never too dry. Now comes the bread, usually old slices from earlier in the week, toasted if they're extra dry, but often just laid flat on a plate. The hot onion and egg gravy is ladled on top, soaking into the bread and filling every crack. The result is a soft, rich plate of food that's cheap but deeply satisfying. This kind of meal teaches a lesson. Simple doesn't mean boring. The flavors are deep because they come from real cooking, not seasoning packets or store-bought sauces. Just onions, eggs, flour, and bread. That's it. But together they make a dish that tastes like effort and care. In Amish homes, this dinner might come after a long day of field work or in the middle of winter when supplies are low. It's fast, made in one pan, and fills everyone at the table. And it turns something many people would throw away, old bread, into the highlight of the meal. It's more than just gravy on bread. It's a reminder that when you know how to cook with heart, even the smallest things can feel like a feast. When the pantry runs low and dinner needs to come from what's already in the kitchen, the Amish turn to meals that do double duty. Baked oatmeal with apples and butter is one of those dishes. Most would call it breakfast, but for Amish families, it often makes a filling and comforting dinner, especially when money's tight and the weather is cold. The heart of this dish is oats. Not the instant kind, but old-fashioned rolled oats that cook slow and taste better. They're mixed in a bowl with milk, a little brown sugar, a pinch of salt, and a few shakes of cinnamon. Then come the apples, chopped small, skins left on or off depending on the season and the hands making it. Butter is melted and stirred in, making the whole thing smell rich even before it hits the oven. Once it's poured into a baking dish, it's left to bake until the top turns golden and the apples soften. The edges get slightly crisp, and the inside stays warm and soft like a bread pudding. The apples bring a gentle sweetness, and the cinnamon gives it that cozy feeling that makes the house feel warmer just from the smell alone. Sometimes Amish families top it with a little cream or drizzle of honey, but even plain, this meal feels whole. It's not heavy like meat or greasy like fried food. Instead, it gives steady energy and a full stomach. It's perfect for a day when dinner needs to be easy, cheap, and still feel like something made with care. Oats are cheap and last forever on a shelf. Apples can be fresh or dried, and butter is something most Amish families churn themselves. That means this dish can be made anytime with ingredients that are always around, and that's the beauty of it. Baked oatmeal isn't fancy or loud, but it's steady, sweet, and strong enough to be called dinner. In a world where many meals come out of boxes or bags, this one still comes out of an oven, and that makes all the difference. Sometimes dinner is as simple as pulling from the garden and the henhouse. Buttered beets and boiled eggs might not sound like much, but in Amish homes, they're a trusted and colorful meal that's both cheap and packed with strength. It starts with the beets. Fresh from the garden or pulled from the root cellar, they're scrubbed clean and boiled until soft. The skins slip off easily after cooking, revealing that deep red color that stains your fingers but brightens the plate. The beets are then sliced or cubed and tossed in melted butter, just enough to coat them and bring out their earthy sweetness. A pinch of salt is added, sometimes a little black pepper. That's all it needs. While the beets are cooling slightly, eggs from the backyard are boiled until just right, firm but not rubbery. Peeled and sliced, they're placed right beside the beets or sometimes layered on top. Their yellow centers look bright against the dark red of the beets, making the whole plate feel alive, even if it only has two things on it. This dinner may not be heavy, but it's strong in other ways. Beets are full of nutrients, iron, fiber, vitamins. Eggs give protein and energy. Together, they offer real fuel for tired bodies. Amish families often eat this in the summer when it's too hot to cook much, or in winter when canned beets and stored eggs still bring color to the table. Nothing in this dish is wasted. The beet greens are often saved for another meal. The eggs come from hens that are fed scraps from the same table. Everything comes full circle, cheap, homegrown, and powerful. There are no sauces here, no spices you can't pronounce, just real food, made well. Buttered beets and boiled eggs remind us that simple meals can still feel like a blessing. And when the cupboards are bare and the budget is tight, that kind of meal is more than enough. Some dinners don't need a long list of ingredients to be good. They just need the right ones. That's what makes the potato and green bean skillet a favorite in Amish kitchens. It's hearty, simple, and full of deep, home-cooked flavor. Even better, it tastes richer the next day, which makes it perfect for leftovers. It begins with potatoes, peeled and diced, then tossed into a hot cast-iron skillet with a bit of lard or leftover salt pork. Salt pork is key here. It's not quite bacon, but it brings that same salty, smoky flavor that soaks into the potatoes as they sizzle. Garlic is often added next, just enough to give the dish a warm kick without overpowering it. Once the potatoes are crisp and golden, green beans go in. These might be fresh from the garden, canned from last year, or even frozen if stored from harvest. They're cut into bite-sized pieces and tossed with the hot potatoes until everything blends together. The beans soften slightly, soaking up the flavors from the skillet and the fat from the salt pork. Sometimes a little onion is thrown in if there's some on hand. A sprinkle of black pepper, maybe a pinch of salt if the pork didn't bring enough. But there's nothing fancy here, just good ingredients cooked in the right order. What makes this dish special is how well it holds together. The potatoes fill you up. The beans bring texture and balance. The salt pork gives it that rich flavor that ties everything together. It's dinner that feels like it came from the earth and the smokehouse. And in many Amish homes, that's exactly where it does. The skillet goes from stove to table, sometimes with a side of fresh bread or a slice of apple butter toast. But even on its own, this meal stands strong. It feeds hungry families, stretches what's available, and proves that with a little heat and a little heart, a few basic foods can become something worth remembering. This dish doesn't try to be pretty, but it doesn't need to. Cabbage and cornbread might sound plain, but when they come together in the same bowl, something special happens. In Amish homes, it's one of the smartest ways to stretch two cheap foods into a full meal. First, the cabbage is chopped into thick chunks and stewed slowly in a pot with a little water, a spoon of lard or butter, and some salt. If there's an onion available, it's added for flavor. If not, the cabbage holds its own just fine. The heat breaks it down into a soft, warm tangle of leaves and broth. It smells earthy, a little sweet, and deeply comforting. Meanwhile, cornbread is baked, or pulled out from what's left of yesterday's meal. It's crumbly, golden, and sometimes a little dry, especially after sitting out overnight. But that's exactly what makes it perfect for this meal. The dry cornbread is crumbled into a bowl, and then the hot stewed cabbage, juice and all, is poured right over the top. The broth from the cabbage soaks into the cornbread, turning it soft like pudding, but with more texture. Each bite mixes the savory softness of the cabbage with the slightly sweet grain of the cornmeal. It's warm, thick, and fills every corner of the stomach without needing anything else. This is poor man's food that feels rich. It uses what the garden gives and what the oven bakes. There's no meat here, no fancy spices, but it still feels like a full meal. The Amish don't waste food, and this dinner shows that clearly. Leftover cornbread and simple cabbage can still feed a family well, and do it with pride. In homes where every dollar counts and every bite matters, meals like this are gold. Not because they shine, but because they work, and that's something worth holding on to. Some meals don't need color, crunch, or even meat to feel complete. Milk noodles with black pepper is one of those quiet, comforting dishes that's been passed down in Amish homes for generations. It's soft, creamy, and full of warmth. Something often served to children, the sick, or anyone who just needs something gentle at the end of a hard day. The meal begins with egg noodles, boiled until just right, not too soft, not too firm. These noodles are simple, made with flour and eggs, often rolled and cut by hand in Amish kitchens. Once they're drained, they go back into the pot or skillet, where warm milk is poured over them. Not much, just enough to coat the noodles and turn the dish into something that feels more like a creamy pasta than a soup. Butter is added next. Not margarine or oil, but real, churned butter that melts quickly and gives the milk a smooth, rich taste. As the milk heats and the noodles soak it in, a generous sprinkle of black pepper goes on top. That's it. No cheese, no sauce, no meat, just milk, butter, noodles, and cracked pepper. The black pepper might seem like a small thing, but it brings the whole dish to life. The creamy noodles stay mellow, and the pepper adds just enough bite to make each spoonful feel special. Some Amish cooks add a pinch of salt or a dash of nutmeg, but most keep it simple, because that's where the strength of the meal really lies. This dish is often served in deep bowls, eaten slowly with a spoon, and savored like a memory. It's one of those meals that doesn't shout, but it speaks deeply. It costs almost nothing to make, but it feels like a gift. In a world where dinners often come with long labels and frozen sides, milk noodles with black pepper is a reminder that food doesn't need to be complicated to be powerful. It just needs to be warm, real, and made with love. In Amish life, no piece of bread is ever wasted, and tomato bread stew proves exactly why. This dish starts with what most people might throw away: stale bread, soft tomatoes, and leftover onions. But when cooked together, they create something warm, tangy, and filling, almost like pizza in a bowl. It begins with onions, chopped and slowly cooked in a pot with a bit of butter or lard. Once they're golden and soft, stewed tomatoes are added, fresh from the garden in summer or canned from last season if it's winter. These tomatoes are already rich and soft, breaking down into a thick, flavorful base as they simmer with the onions. While that cooks, stale bread is torn into rough chunks, no need to be neat. These dry pieces go straight into the pot. The heat from the tomato mixture begins to soften them almost right away, but they don't turn to mush. They soak up the flavor, becoming soft but still holding shape. A sprinkle of herbs, usually oregano or basil if on hand, adds just a hint of sharpness. The whole thing is stirred gently until it thickens. It's not quite a soup, not quite a casserole, somewhere in between. Warm, hearty, and full of simple flavor, the kind of dish that doesn't need sides because it already has everything: starch, vegetables, flavor, and heart. Tomato bread stew was never meant to impress. It was meant to stretch ingredients, fill stomachs, and keep families strong. It's a reminder that you don't need much to make something good, just a few tired scraps, a hot pot, and the will to make something out of nothing. In Amish homes, this meal often shows up on quiet evenings, especially after a big harvest or a long workday. And even though it's built from leftovers, it's never treated like a throwaway dish. Because the truth is, it tastes like home, and in hard times, that's the best kind of dinner there is. Some dinners only show up for a short time each year, but when they do, they're unforgettable. Dandelion greens with hot bacon dressing is one of the Amish springtime favorites, made from something most people ignore: weeds. But to Amish families, those bright yellow flowers mean dinner is growing wild and free in the fields. As soon as the first dandelions appear, families gather baskets and head outside. The best greens are picked before the flowers bloom, young, tender, and slightly bitter. These leaves are cleaned, chopped, and placed into a big bowl. They might look like spinach or lettuce, but their flavor is sharper, earthier. Next comes the dressing, the real star of the dish. A few strips of bacon are fried in a pan until crisp. The bacon is set aside, and into the hot drippings go a splash of vinegar, a spoonful of sugar, and a pinch of salt. This mix is stirred until it sizzles and thickens slightly. The smell is sharp and sweet, and it fills the kitchen in seconds. While still hot, the dressing is poured directly over the dandelion greens. The heat wilts the leaves just a little, softening them without fully cooking them. Crumbled bacon is sprinkled on top for crunch and flavor. Some Amish cooks add a boiled egg sliced thin for extra protein and color. This dish is often eaten with bread or fried potatoes on the side, but even on its own, it's enough. The greens are fresh and bright, the dressing is tangy and rich, and the bacon ties it all together. It's light but filling, simple but bold. For the Amish, this meal is more than food. It's a sign of the seasons. It means winter is over and new life is coming. And even though the ingredients are cheap, the feeling it gives is priceless. Dandelion greens with hot bacon dressing is a perfect reminder. Sometimes the best things aren't bought, they're picked. When the fridge is nearly empty and money is tight, one of the smartest meals in the Amish kitchen is egg potato pancakes. Cheap, quick, and made with just a handful of ingredients, this dish is a go-to dinner that turns leftovers into something golden and delicious. It starts with potatoes, grated raw or sometimes boiled and mashed. These are mixed in a big bowl with eggs, a little flour, and a pinch of salt. That's the base. Some families add onions or garlic for more flavor, but even plain, the mix comes to life once it hits the skillet. A spoonful of the mixture is dropped into a hot pan with butter or oil. It's pressed flat with the back of a spatula and fried until crispy on one side, then flipped to brown the other. The outside turns golden and crunchy, while the inside stays soft, creamy, and packed with flavor. If done right, they sizzle as soon as they hit the pan, and that's how you know they'll be good. Once cooked, the pancakes are stacked on a plate and served with whatever is available. Applesauce is a classic Amish topping, sweet and cool against the salty, crisp edges. Sour cream is another favorite. Sometimes there's gravy from a previous meal, or even just a dab of butter. These pancakes are more than just dinner. They're a way to use what's already in the house. No meat needed, no special tools, just potatoes, eggs, and a little know-how. They feed big families without fuss and can be made in big batches for next-day meals. Amish families love these because they don't just fill the plate. They fill the house with warmth. They smell good, taste better, and feel like something a grandmother would make with her hands and heart. In a world where fast food and frozen meals are easy to grab, egg potato pancakes are a reminder that with just a little effort and a hot skillet, even the most basic foods can be turned into something comforting and real. There are some meals that don't take much time but leave a lasting feeling of comfort. Squash onion hash is one of them. It's quick, simple, and perfect for summer nights when gardens are full, but there's little time or energy to cook a big dinner. In many Amish homes, this is what ends up on the plate when squash grows faster than it can be picked. The heart of this dish is yellow summer squash. It's picked fresh, washed, and diced into small, even cubes. The seeds are soft enough to leave in, and the skin adds texture and color. Alongside the squash, onions are peeled and chopped, thin slices that bring a bite of sharp flavor. A skillet is warmed with a generous spoon of butter, and the onions are tossed in first. They sizzle and soften, turning golden and releasing that warm, sweet smell that fills the kitchen. Then the squash goes in. It cooks fast, soaking up the butter and softening within minutes. The pieces brown slightly on the edges, giving a little crispness to the soft inside. The final touch is a splash of vinegar, just enough to bring out the squash's natural sweetness and give the whole dish a light, tangy kick. A pinch of salt and pepper finishes it off. Some Amish cooks add a little sugar or herbs, but most let the squash speak for itself. This meal doesn't need meat or sides. It's often served with fresh bread or eaten straight from the skillet. The squash is sweet, the onions are savory, and the vinegar cuts through it all in just the right way. It's not a heavy dinner, but it fills you up gently, and it shows just how far a garden can go when the right hands are cooking. With only 3 or 4 ingredients, squash onion hash proves that flavor doesn't come from cost. It comes from care, timing, and knowing how to use what the land gives you. When times are hard and nothing goes to waste, the Amish turn scraps into supper. Poor man's Pureogi is one of those meals that was born out of smart thinking and survival. It may not be fancy, but it's filling, flavorful, and built entirely from what's already in the kitchen. It starts with leftover mashed potatoes, soft, creamy, and often from yesterday's dinner. These are mixed with a little salt and maybe a spoon of butter or onion for flavor. Then comes the dough. But instead of making fresh dough from scratch, many Amish families use scraps from other meals, leftover biscuit or pie dough, or even pieces trimmed from homemade bread loaves. Small bits of dough are rolled out flat and filled with a spoonful of the mashed potato mix. The edges are pinched shut tightly, forming little pockets. These are then either boiled in salted water or fried in a pan with a bit of butter or lard. Boiling makes them soft and chewy. Frying gives them a golden, crispy shell. Both ways are delicious. To finish the meal, sliced onions are fried until sweet and browned, then spread on top of the pierogi. The warmth of the onions melts into the dough, and the soft potato inside makes every bite feel rich, even though the ingredients are incredibly cheap. This dinner is a perfect example of Amish resourcefulness. Leftovers become the main dish. Dough scraps that would have been tossed out now hold the whole meal together. And even though the dish is simple, it has a deep, satisfying taste that feels like a reward. In Amish homes, poor man's pierogi is often served on quiet nights when the work is done and the house is still. It reminds families that good food isn't about what you buy. It's about what you do with what you have. It's humble, hearty, and just plain smart. Sometimes the best dinners are the ones that look like breakfast but taste like comfort. Creamed peas on biscuits is one of those Amish meals that fills a plate and a belly without ever touching a slice of meat. It's creamy, warm, and simple, made from pantry basics and garden leftovers. It all starts with the biscuits. In Amish kitchens, they're often made fresh from flour, baking powder, lard, and a splash of milk. Rolled out and baked until golden, these biscuits are soft on the inside and flaky on top. But what makes this dinner shine is what goes on them, not in them. The sauce begins in a skillet with butter and a little flour, stirred together to form a roux. Then warm milk is added slowly, turning the mixture into a thick, creamy sauce. Once it bubbles and smooths out, peas are added in, either fresh from the garden or pulled from the freezer. The heat brings out their sweetness and turns the sauce a soft green. Seasoning is simple. A little salt, maybe a crack of pepper, and that's it. The goal isn't to hide the peas, but to let their flavor come through. The sauce wraps around them like a blanket, making each spoonful smooth and rich. To serve, the biscuits are split in half and placed on a plate, and the creamed peas are poured right over the top. The sauce soaks into the biscuit, softening it and creating a dish that's both tender and hearty. This meal isn't about flash, it's about function. It fills you up fast, warms you from the inside, and uses ingredients that are almost always in an Amish home. No meat, no problem. The creaminess of the sauce and the sweetness of the peas do the job just fine. For Amish families, meals like this are reminders that richness doesn't need to come from meat or expensive ingredients. It can come from simple things: peas, milk, flour, and care. And in a world that's always rushing, this dinner slows everything down to just what matters: a hot plate, a full stomach, and a quiet table. At first glance, this meal might confuse anyone unfamiliar with old-world cooking. Grits with butter? Sure. But grits with tomato butter? That's something most people have never heard of. Yet in Amish homes, especially in the South and Midwest, this simple pairing is a clever and satisfying dinner that doesn't cost much but keeps you full for hours. The base is white hominy grits, coarsely ground corn that's boiled slowly in water or milk until soft and thick. These grits are plain on their own, but they soak up flavor like a sponge. A little salt, a small pat of butter, and thyme are all it takes to make them creamy and smooth, perfect for eating with a spoon. While the grits simmer, tomato butter is made, or brought out of storage if canned earlier in the year. Tomato butter sounds fancy, but it's really just cooked down tomatoes mixed with sugar, spices, and sometimes a bit of vinegar. The result is a thick, sweet, and savory spread that's smooth like jam, but rich like sauce. It smells like a mix of ketchup, cinnamon, and stewed tomatoes, warm and a little tangy. Once the grits are ready, they're scooped into bowls and a spoonful of tomato butter is dropped right in the middle. As it melts, it spreads across the hot grits, bringing sweetness, spice, and just a touch of acidity. Each bite is warm and full of contrast. Soft corn grits, rich butter, and bright tomato flavor all at once. There's no meat, no cheese, no long list of ingredients. But this dish has everything it needs. It's filling, flavorful, and made from two things that store well and cost very little. Hominy grits and tomato butter is a dish that teaches a lesson. Strange combinations can work better than expected, especially when they come from tradition and need. In the Amish world, creativity often comes from constraint, and meals like this show that even the simplest foods, if made with thought, can still surprise the tongue and feed the soul. Some dinners are made to stretch what's left in the pantry, but that doesn't mean they lack flavor or strength. Lentil and Eggloaf is one of those smart Amish meals that skips meat but still feels like a full supper. It's hearty, rich with protein, and slices just like a classic meatloaf, only without the high price tag. The loaf starts with lentils, small round legumes that cook quickly and hold their shape. Brown lentils are usually used, but any type will do. They're boiled until soft, then mashed just enough to break them up while still leaving a little texture. Next come the breadcrumbs, usually made from leftover bread that's been dried and crumbled. This helps bind the loaf together and gives it that classic firm texture. Eggs are added next, not just for protein, but to hold the whole thing together as it bakes. Some Amish families mix in a few chopped onions, grated carrots, or spices like garlic and thyme, but even plain, the loaf holds flavor from the lentils and the browned edges that crisp in the oven. The mixture is packed into a loaf pan, shaped tight, and baked until golden brown. About halfway through, a layer of ketchup, mustard, or both is spread across the top. This simple glaze adds a sweet, tangy finish that caramelizes as the loaf cooks. Once baked, it's sliced and served like meatloaf, thick pieces that can be eaten hot with vegetables or cold the next day with a slab of cheese or spread of butter. It's one of those meals that keeps on giving. What makes this dinner shine is how much it does with so little. Lentils are cheap and store well. Eggs come fresh from the coop. Breadcrumbs are made from what's already on the shelf. Yet when it all comes together, it feels like a full meal, satisfying, firm, and perfect for sharing. In many Amish homes, this is the kind of dinner served when guests show up unannounced or when money is tight and creativity is needed. Lentil and Eggloaf proves that with care and cleverness, even humble ingredients can stand tall on the dinner table. When the days are long and the nights are too hot for cooking, Amish families turn to cool plates that require no fire, no fuss, and no waste. The cold pickled egg and bread plate is one of those summer meals that's light, filling, and packed with flavor, without ever touching a stove. The meal starts days ahead, with pickled eggs. Hard-boiled eggs are peeled and dropped into jars filled with vinegar, sugar, and beet juice. Sometimes mustard seeds or peppercorns are added for extra flavor. Over time, the eggs soak up the bright pink color of the beets and the sharp bite of the vinegar. After a day or two, the yolks turn slightly red, and the outside becomes tangy and sweet. On hot evenings, when no one wants to turn on the oven, these eggs become the center of the meal. They're sliced or halved and placed on a plate next to thick slices of homemade bread, dense, chewy, and full of flavor. Some families add a slab of hard cheese, a spoonful of mustard, or even a few slices of onion. The result is more than a snack. It's a full dinner that keeps well and tastes fresh even in the heat. The sharpness of the eggs, the softness of the bread, and the richness of the cheese all come together in a way that feels balanced and bright. There's no cooking, no pots to wash, no meat needed, just good ingredients that have been cared for and preserved the old way. Pickling has always been part of Amish life, not just to save food, but to add flavor and variety to simple meals. This dish is often served cold on the porch after a long day in the sun when no one wants to be in the kitchen. It reminds you that good food doesn't need to be hot or heavy. Sometimes it just needs to be ready, fresh, and made with care. Cold pickled eggs and bread may seem small, but together they tell a story of preparation, patience, and tradition, one cool bite at a time. At first glance, this might sound like something only a child would ask for, but in Amish homes, peanut butter spread sandwiches are a surprising lifesaver during hard times. They're sweet, sticky, and unexpectedly filling. What began as a treat quickly turned into a survival meal for families needing something fast, cheap, and packed with calories. The heart of this sandwich is the spread. It's made by mixing peanut butter, corn syrup, and marshmallow fluff in a big bowl until smooth. The result is thick, sweet, and creamy, almost like dessert. Each bite sticks to your teeth, your tongue, and most importantly, your stomach. The spread is slathered onto slices of homemade bread. The bread is usually dense, made from scratch, and slightly sweet. When paired with the sticky filling, it creates a sandwich that feels heavy, comforting, and strangely complete. Some families mix in a little honey or add crushed graham crackers or oats for extra texture. But even without additions, this sandwich hits hard. It's not just sugar. It also carries protein from the peanut butter and fat from the corn syrup. For Amish workers in the fields or kids running wild outside, it's the kind of food that gives quick energy and holds them over until the next meal. It's also one of the easiest dinners to throw together when the stove isn't an option, the fridge is empty, or everyone is too tired to cook. Just mix, spread, and serve. It doesn't need heat, it doesn't need utensils, and it definitely doesn't need explaining, because once you try it, you get it. In hard times, it's not always about health or balance. Sometimes it's about getting through the day without going hungry. Peanut butter spread sandwiches may seem small, but they're packed with purpose. In the Amish world, where every meal has a reason and nothing is wasted, even this sticky, sweet sandwich has earned its place at the table. If there's one meal that can feed a crowd with very little money, it's tomato macaroni casserole. Built from 3 basic ingredients, pasta, tomatoes, and milk, this dish has filled bellies for generations in Amish homes. It's not flashy, but it's warm, filling, and full of that cozy feeling that says everything's going to be okay. It starts with elbow macaroni, boiled until just soft. While the noodles cook, tomatoes are stewed, either from fresh-picked summer crops or canned from last season's garden. The tomatoes are simmered with chopped onions until everything blends into a soft, tangy sauce. A splash of milk is stirred in, giving the sauce a creamy texture without turning it into soup. Some families add a little sugar to cut the acid of the tomatoes or toss in herbs like basil or oregano, but most keep it simple, just tomato, onion, milk, and a pinch of salt. And once the macaroni is drained, it's mixed into the tomato sauce and poured into a baking dish. If there's extra bread lying around, it's turned into breadcrumbs and sprinkled over the top. If there's a bit of cheese, it's shredded and added too, but only if it's available. The casserole is then baked until bubbling at the edges and slightly golden on top. The result is soft, saucy, and rich, not in price, but in satisfaction. It's the kind of dish that stretches far, feeds many, and leaves everyone full without breaking the grocery budget. Some Amish families even eat it cold the next day for lunch, sliced into squares like lasagna. Tomato macaroni casserole shows that comfort food doesn't need to come from a store shelf or a fancy recipe. It can come from a sack of noodles, a jar of tomatoes, and a little creativity. For Amish families, it's more than dinner. It's proof that with care and tradition, even the simplest meals can carry deep strength. In the world of Amish cooking, old traditions are never lost. They're just passed quietly from one kitchen to the next. Buttermilk corn soup is one of those rare dishes that came over with the early German settlers and never left. It's warm, sweet, sour, and surprisingly simple. Made with just a few ingredients, it was, and still is, a clever way to feed a family when food is tight and time is short. The base of the soup is buttermilk, which gives it a tangy flavor and creamy texture. It's poured into a pot and heated gently, never boiling too hard. The goal is to warm it slowly so it stays smooth. While the milk warms, corn is added, fresh in the summer, or frozen or canned during colder months. The corn brings sweetness and texture, turning the soup into something hearty and bright. Next come the potatoes. Peeled, chopped, and boiled ahead of time, they're added in to thicken the soup and make it more filling. A bit of sugar is stirred in. Not too much, just enough to balance the sourness of the buttermilk. Some Amish cooks add a pinch of salt or a splash of vinegar to sharpen the flavor even more, but the soup always stays simple. The final result is a smooth, pale yellow bowl of soup that smells faintly sweet and tangy. It's ladled into bowls and often served with a piece of fresh bread or cornbread on the side. It may not be as thick as a chowder or as chunky as a stew, but it wraps around the stomach like a warm blanket. This soup is often served in spring or late summer when corn is plentiful and the buttermilk is fresh. It doesn't need meat. It doesn't need spices. It carries the old world in every bite, and that's enough. For the Amish, buttermilk corn soup is more than a meal. It's a memory, a taste of history, a reminder that comfort doesn't come from complexity. It comes from knowing how to use what you have and still make something beautiful. When spring finally breaks through the cold ground, Amish gardens give one of their first gifts, rhubarb. Tart, bright, and full of snap, rhubarb is often used in pies or jams, but sometimes it becomes the main course. Rhubarb stew with dumplings is a clever dessert dinner that stretches the harvest, fills the belly, and adds a little sweetness to a season of hard work. The stew starts with freshly picked rhubarb chopped into small pieces. It's cooked slowly in a pot with sugar and just a little water. As it heats, the rhubarb breaks down into a thick jam-like stew, soft, sticky, and bright pink. The sugar cuts the sourness but doesn't erase it, leaving a sweet tart flavor that wakes up your mouth with every spoonful. Once the rhubarb is ready, dumpling dough is mixed. Just flour, baking powder, a pinch of salt, and a splash of milk. The dough is dropped by spoonfuls directly onto the hot rhubarb mixture. The heat steams them from below, puffing them up into soft, warm clouds that float on top of the stew. The pot is covered and left to cook just long enough for the dumplings to set. When it's done, the lid is lifted and a wave of steam escapes, carrying the smell of rhubarb and fresh dough. The dumplings are spooned out alongside the stew, sometimes topped with a little cream, a drizzle of honey, or even nothing at all. This dish isn't something you'll find in restaurants. It's home food, survival food, the kind of meal that makes the most of what's growing out back. It fills the stomach and lifts the spirit all in one go. For Amish families, rhubarb stew with dumplings is a favorite after long days in the field. It's light, bright, and comforting in its own surprising way. And while it might be sweet, it's still strong enough to carry the name dinner. Because when times are tight and the harvest is small, even dessert can pull double duty. This is the kind of dinner that doesn't look like much, but it holds the same weight as meatloaf or casserole. Cracked wheat and onion bake is a strong, simple dish that's chewy, full of flavor, and made from ingredients that cost almost nothing. It's the type of meal that fills the stomach, warms the body, and stays with you through hours of work or cold weather. It starts with cracked wheat, also known as bulgur or wheat berries, that have been crushed into small pieces. The wheat is soaked in warm water or broth for a few hours to soften it. This step makes it easier to cook later and brings out its natural nutty flavor. While it soaks, onions are slowly caramelized in a skillet with butter or lard. This takes time, about 20 minutes, but the payoff is rich, sweet, golden onions that bring deep flavor to the dish. Once the wheat is soft and the onions are ready, everything is mixed together in a big bowl. Cracked wheat, caramelized onions, a little salt, and some broth to bind it all. Some Amish cooks add herbs like thyme or sage if they have any on hand, but most keep it simple. The mixture is poured into a baking dish, pressed down firmly, and baked until the top turns golden and slightly crisp. Inside, it stays soft and chewy, almost like a dense stuffing or grain cake. When it comes out of the oven, it's sliced into squares and served hot. It can also be eaten cold the next day, often with eggs or pickles on the side. This dinner is earthy and honest. It doesn't try to impress, but it doesn't need to. The cracked wheat provides fiber and energy. The onions add sweetness and flavor, and the whole thing costs just pennies per serving, especially when ingredients come from the pantry or garden. For Amish families, this meal is a quiet reminder that food doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be made with care, from the land and the heart. Cracked wheat and onion bake might be humble, but it's strong, and in the world of survival cooking, that's what truly counts. These 25 dinners aren't just meals. They're proof that survival can still taste like comfort. The Amish have mastered the art of doing more with less, turning scraps into suppers, garden weeds into warm bowls, and yesterday's bread into tonight's feast. Each dish carries the story of hard times, smart hands, and a deep respect for what's already in the house. No waste, no rush, just honest food that fills the belly and holds a family together. If these meals reminded you of your grandmother's cooking or gave you ideas for your own table, let us know in the comments. What was your favorite dish? What would you try first? And if you love learning how real food brings people through hard times, don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more simple wisdom and forgotten recipes still to come.